Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about the AMC prediction, the squeeze endgame, shorts weakness, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this from Adam Aram. He says, I predict that millions and millions of people will see Wicked for Good in its opening week. Will you be one of them? Let us hear from you with this hashtag. So if you guys have the ability to, make sure you share this new movie, and of course, make sure you get people to watch it at AMC. Now, already we know that this movie is already predicted to do extremely well. And this is one of the few other movies that are coming out at the end of this year to, of course, do extremely well as well. We also have Avatar coming out next month. And so this is what we've said with that. Ending Q4, we are very likely to be looking at an extremely good box office. And the way we can benefit from this is, of course, if everyone were to watch it at AMC and able to obviously increase to the revenue. And so if you have the ability to, make sure you go watch it. And if you can't, make sure you at least share it around. It's why I wanted to start the video off with this. Make sure you comment down below for those of you people who are going to watch it and tell other people how good it is. Now then, let's talk about this. UBS acquiring 23 million AMC shares showed beyond doubt that the short positions inherited from CS is massive. I'm convinced it will eventually be converted into AMC shareholder value. Added a few yesterday, I'd rather see price drop further than missing out on a lifetime opportunity. So for those of you who aren't aware, what we talked about is how recently institution accumulations has been increasing massively. But on top of that is understanding how a lot of these institutions who have bought into AMC also have massive exposure to short side of AMC. So we're talking companies like UBS, Goldman Sachs, Citadel, and many, many more. And so this obviously brings us to an interesting position where if these short sellers were so big on shorting AMC, were so convinced that AMC is going bankrupt, that AMC is going to zero, why have they bought shares of AMC and then even then increase their share size of AMC? UBS acquiring 23 million, knowing that they inherited a massive short position of AMC from Credit Suisse, should show you just how big down the hole they are, of course, in. And remember, we talked about this. UBS is in a position where they have to watch their capital allocation very, very carefully. They were told to increase their margin requirements. So at times like this, they want to make investments that are smart investments that will gain them the best returns. And so the fact that they're buying AMC should already give you a lot of answers about how institutions are viewing AMC. Not to mention, we talked about Goldman Sachs, we talked about Citadel. So you should understand how much power we obviously have. Now, on top of this, what we are seeing is still these articles about AMC. You can see AMC Entertainment Holdings 28% dip in price shows sentiment is matching revenues. Now, this is obviously ridiculous, but once again, we are not surprised about this. Firstly, we've already talked about this comparison. You can take a look at all of these articles telling you to sell AMC, telling you to stay away from AMC. But if you look deeply, if you look closely enough, what you will see is that actually institutions have been buying AMC. And so the capital inflow is different from what the media is trying to tell you. However, what I find ridiculous about this article is saying how the price shows the sentiment is matching the revenues. If you take a look at the revenues, you'll see an increase in revenue. Very likely for Q4, we're going to be seeing another increase in revenue. So the fact that they're saying that a drop in price is matching the revenue should already show you how ridiculous this is. To me, it looks like most of these articles aren't made without any actual care. There's no due diligence behind it. It is just they received a instruction of saying, make a bad article on AMC. Doesn't matter what it is, just make it bad and then post it. Because to me, that's what it feels like. Because if they've done any research, they will know that the sentiment is increasing. Evidently, we've seen with the institutional accumulation. They'll know that the revenue is increasing, which we've seen from the quarterly report. And, this once again is just showing how false these articles are and the fact that they're made out here to get people to sell their shares and stay away. Because if you take another look, one of the things they don't talk about, despite the fact that the price is dropping, is the fact we're viewing 74% of exchange. So if they were to include the fact that the price is dropping because 75% of the share volume is not being accounted for, is not hitting the exchange, is not having any impact, then it will make their articles more believable. It has more credibility. But in this case, they are, of course, not mentioning it. Because why else would they mention the sole reason that these institutions are using to bring AMC down? Why would they talk about the reason why we're not seeing real price discovery of AMC? Because they obviously want to hide it. They want the retail, they want the mass public to think that AMC is a failing company and that you should stay away and that you should sell your AMC shares, when despite the fact we are seeing the complete opposite from the actual things that are going on with AMC. Now, let's talk about this. This is something that has been released, and once again, to me, is very interesting. Now, the reason why I say interesting is because what's happening. You can see Barclays accidentally leaked MOAS endgame settings, $11 quadrillion. So GME plus every naked short ever written, plus every ETF loop, plus every counterparty's tiers. And so this was what was shown for the market cap of GME at 11 quadrillion. Now, to me, I think it is a glitch. Because it would be ridiculous for GME market cap to be 11 quadrillion. Now, this isn't to say that GME's market cap should be higher than where it is at right now, but it's me saying that 11 quadrillion is very likely a glitch. However, the thing I want to talk about this is that despite it being a glitch, why did it get to 11 quadrillion? It would have meant that the actual market cap is already so big that even a small change brought it to 11 quadrillion. Maybe it would have been 1 trillion, 11 trillion. Maybe it would have been, 110 billion. Why was it that, it was able to get to 11 quadrillion? And that's the answer that we should be trying to look for. And so, easily, even if they were to accidentally type in a few zeros, for it to get to 11 quadrillion would have meant that it was already massive to begin with. And so that's why I've said in terms of the fact that this is something that's obviously very, very interesting. Now, it isn't the first time we've seen glitches in market caps for AMC, for GME. And we've always said that at some point, these glitches aren't glitches anymore. They're just exposing what's actually in the system and that it was actually an error for them to show. But what we talked about is understanding the fact that, of course, we will never get to know what the market cap is because we will never know how many synthetics there are. But one thing we do know is the fact that right now, when you take a look at sometimes, when it's shown that AMC should be 100 billion, when it's shown that the outstanding shares of AMC has been 10x, 20x, when it shows that AMC's price is trading for in the hundreds, in the thousands, every time we've seen this, it's very likely that it is true. It's very likely that it has happened. And that's why we've always said that these short sellers are trying to hide something that they can't hide anymore. Another thing you can see here is there were more than 1 billion equity errors over the span of 8 trading days in October, as you guys can see here. Now, once again, the CAT system is, of course, showing what's happening within the market. And the fact that we were seeing 1 billion equity errors should tell you exactly what is going on. And so this is what we've said. These errors are very likely to end up involving AMC, involving GME. These errors, so-called errors, are the very reason why we're seeing AMC and GME's price, of course, being suppressed and manipulated. So you can see why these institutions want the CAT system gone. The fact that we still have it and it's showing this is something that's obviously very, very good. But we've said it comes to a point where just showing this error is not good enough. We actually need regulations to obviously force repercussions on these institutions who are making these errors. And so that's, of course, the next step that we want to see them take. The very fact we are able to see this should give you clarification. It should give you clarity on what's happening in the market, understanding the market manipulation, the exploits that's going on. But for us to see any changes, we obviously need to see a harsher consequence happening. Now, this is what we're looking at right now. So recently we talked about the fear and greed index. Now, this is what we're looking at. And the last time this happened, what we saw was how GME went from $20 to $35. Now, the reason why I talk about this is because you can see during times of extreme fear is when we see the market fall. And when we see the market fall, we're seeing AMC and GME goes up. Now, that should already show you the correlation. And it's what we've said the whole time, that they use the overall market as collaterals to suppress AMC and GME. And so it's in times like when we see mass sell-offs is why you see AMC and GME go up in price, because the collaterals are disappearing in value. So at times like this, where we're looking at this right now, we could potentially be seeing that. Another thing is showing this. Wall Street has finally been able to give retail traders $20 GME shares. Unbelievable, it took them over a year. Signs of fatigue are definitely starting to show. Sub 20 prices will be extremely hard to maintain without a market crash, a violent disconnect, then MOAS. So what we have to understand is that we've known these shorts have been starting to struggle. We've seen it with AMC, we've seen it with GME. Again, the fact that they have to rely on the off exchange right now should already show you the desperation. When you take a look at the FTDs, the tokens, you start to see the signs of weakness everywhere. This is something that we have emphasized on this channel, something that we have covered, but the same applies for GME as well. And so the signs of fatigue, the signs of weakness is extremely good for us, because it comes to a point where when this gets worse, when the collaterals falls more, which we are looking at, that's when we will see the MOAS, we will see the squeeze happen. Another showcase of dark pool, you can see $22 million worth of GME dark pool prints today. That's positioning. So you can look at this right now, and this is what we talked about with how mass orders are going through the dark pools. Is why you won't see it affecting the market. Is why we've said that they need to, of course, get rid of the dark pool, or at least more regulations. And this is what the recent Genius Group lawsuit has obviously been about. And you can just see it right here in terms of how ridiculous it is. And a big reason for why they're, of course, hiding it is because we're seeing right now the calls to puts ratio for GME. And you can see how big, how massive this is. Now, the reason why this is important is obviously because of the gamma squeeze that it can cause. When you take a look at a massive proportion of, or a big ratio of calls than it is to put, and if we get to that point where they are all going in the money and we see it actually being exercised, that's when we can see gamma calls happening, when we can see gamma squeeze happening. Now, this isn't to say that 100% it's happening, but the very fact that it is a possibility should be something that is we should be made aware of. And you also have to realize every time there is a possibility of a gamma squeeze happening, the ones who are worried the most are the short sellers, because they're seeing the pressure increasing. Now, this is something that we've talked about. I'm not going to bore you guys with how long this is. This is definitely something you guys should look into. So make sure you read this. I just won't say it all out loud. But then you can see just how crazy it is with the dark pool. This is just showing a Genius Group and talking about a staggering 96% of the volume vanish into off-exchange pools. And you can understand why this is ridiculous. And this is why there is a lawsuit for this in the first place. And so if you guys still are unsure, I don't know why you would, but if you guys are still unsure of whether or not dark pools can affect the price of a stock, take a look at this and just do your own due diligence. And you can see this. Genius Group keeps hitting zero, and they keep finding between 400 to 700,000. And so this is what we're looking at for the shares. Now, when we see this for AMC, we know what's happening. That's when because they're creating more synthetics. Now, the very same could be happening for Genius Group as well. And the reason why I think this is good is that obviously the creation of synthetics is not good, because the creation of synthetics is used to devalue a stock. However, what we're looking at is how Genius Group is actively collecting data on the market. So if these available shares are in fact synthetics, that means these are data points that can be collected by Genius Group, which can then be later on submitted. And so if this is a move made by Genius Group to trap these short sellers, to force them to actually create synthetics, then you can understand how important that is and how much leverage we can obviously gain from that. Now, one of the things we've been talking about recently has been about the Japanese market. And you can see here, Japan's government says it may intervene before the Japanese yen to US dollar ratio reaches 160. And so over the last 2 months, the yen has gone from 145 to 157 as a 110 billion plus stimulus package is coming. We're only 2% away from intervention. The reason why this is important, by now you should already realize about the yen carry trade. This is something we talked about. It's about understanding how a lot of these short sellers have massive exposure to this, one of which, of course, being Citadel. And what we have to understand is that if this gets bad, if it actually can't be solved anymore, even if they were to intervene and to cause something to happen, what we could be looking at is how Citadel could get heavily affected. And now, one of the things we've been highlighting on this channel, whether it's in this video or our past, few months, has been collaterals. And the reason for that is because if we are able to see the collaterals disappearing, if we are able to see these shorts not get a hand on easy money, we can be seeing them covering these short positions. Bear in mind, yesterday, now big difference from today, but yesterday we saw 1 trillion wiped out, and we saw how the short sellers were already panicking. Now, for crypto market as well, we could be looking at, and we already looking at $1 trillion in value erased in this month's plunge into bear territory, but it could get even bigger. And the reason why we know it could get bigger, and the reason why we're already seeing how the government are trying to intervene with this, is we're suddenly seeing this. So yesterday we saw Nvidia drop, and recently Nvidia has been the backbone of the market. When Nvidia drops, the whole market drops. And in times like this, you can suddenly see them saying, just in Trump administration considers selling Nvidia H200 chips to China. So this is obviously very, very bullish news for Nvidia. But the reason why they're doing this seems like they want to revive the market, because they realize if Nvidia crashes, the whole market is going to crash. And that is seemingly the worrying part for the market. But once again, we've said Nvidia is being used as huge collaterals. So if we are seeing Nvidia crash, you can imagine how much of these shorts they have to cover just to actually make sure they can fill the hole. Another big thing, private credit default expected to drive 2026 stress, UBS says. So you can see how they're talking about UBS, once again, talking about another default position, talking about another default crisis. And it isn't surprising considering the situations they put themselves in and all of these positions they have, the overexposure, the over leverage. And we talked about why this is obviously very, very worrying for them. Another thing is talking about this. Rich people have trillions of dollars they want to give to hedge funds, or is it that hedge funds need your money? You guys can see here. Now, bear in mind is that what we have seen is how billions of dollars have actually come out of hedge funds. So the fact that they're making this article talking about how rich people have trillions to give is more like how hedge funds are in need of trillions of dollars because of the positions they put themselves in. And so you can see how all of it just really leads to the lack of liquidity by these short sellers, by these institutions, and why it's obviously very big for us. As always, none of this is financial advice, so do take a grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research, and I'll catch you guys next time.